like looking at the clouds that are over there.
I don't
Lots
get
of going out there.
it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah. It's out for serendipity.
Yes.
I would have been over to Thai 202, got my tape carry out back. Instead, I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna go in the basement. I'm not going out. I ran into them.
And we said,
They said, that's a book signing.
oh.
So you see, the silver lining to the cloud.
Well, I tend to look quite a bit because writers tend to do that, so I probably have more time with you this evening than I've had in a long time.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, clouds aside. We're super happy to have you here. We at Left Bank Books are delighted to present Matt Kindt and Margie Kraft Kindt and their wonderful new book, Gilt Frame. Let's give them a warm welcome. And we want to give you all our great thanks as well for being here tonight. When you shop at Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into our local economy. So it maintains our streets and our parks and everything else that we love about St. Louis. It also, of course, helps us as a store get to sell books and do what we love and put on author events such as this and give authors the support that they deserve through their book sales and events as well. So thank you all for shopping local and for joining us tonight. Everybody joining us from afar, thank you for being here wherever you may be. We appreciate your pixels and participation as far as you are able. If you would like to participate in the question and answer period, just leave your question as a YouTube comment. I'll be keeping an eye on that and I can read those for you when we get to that portion. So thank you for being here. All right, our guests of honor tonight, very fashionably dressed. I mean, I have to do it.
On that.
Yes. As I said, Matt Kindt and Margie Kraft. Matt Kindt is a Harvey Award-winning and New York Times bestselling writer and artist of comics and graphic novels. His work includes Mine, MGMT, Berserker, which he worked on with Keanu Reeves, Bang, ENIAC Revolver, 3 Stories, Super Spy, 2 Sisters, and Pistol Whip. He has been nominated for 4 Eisner Awards and 3 Harvey Awards, and he won once. And his work has been translated into French, Spanish, Italian, and German. He lives in St. Louis, Missouri. With his wife and collaborator, the colorist and artist Charlene. And we also have the wonderful Margie Kraft. Margie is an educator who went back to school herself to earn her certificate in creative nonfiction writing.
At Washington.
At Washington.
Yeah.
Each year, she offers a new lecture series and writes to publish. Though her essays and stories have appeared in magazines and newspapers and through a broadcast by an NPR affiliate in New York, and though she has won several contests and awards, this is her first published book. And she believes she has started at the top, teaming up with one of the best in the field and clearly the duelist, her son. Margie also lives in St. Louis with 3,821 companions per book. Is that an updated number?
That's old.
He knows he's going to have to deal with that someday. And also, we're going to be going down to the 6th floor. One of these days, we're going to fall through. I think. So we don't want to mention.
Lips are sealed. That was not. Yes, exactly.
What stays, what happens to it.
Their new book is Gilt Frame, which is a beautiful, brilliant, creative tale, a classic whodunit murder mystery that spans the globe from Paris to Hawaii to Montenegro as we hustle to keep up with the most unlikely murder-solving duo in the history of murder solvers. Here to tell us more about their work and this fantastic new book, please give a very warm welcome to Matt and Mark.
I don't have the illustrious publishing background that Matt has, but one of my favorite lines in one of the newspapers was Keanu Reeves in Boulder.
He did not like that.
No, yeah, yes, he did. He has a good
No,
story.
he did.
He thought it was funny. He laughed and made me feel bad.
No, he knows.
Yeah.
He treats his mom right, so
Yeah.
he appreciated it.
No, I don't know. I think we're going to have Q&A later, but very often one of the first things that people want to know is how did you come to write a book together? How did it get started? Yeah,
Okay. Do you want me to start?
You started the ball rolling initially.
We every Wednesday, my wife and I go over for dinner,
At the St. Regis.
Yeah, to your place, and then we came over one week. This is a couple of years ago now, and I was like, "Mom, you gotta watch. Are you watching Only Murders in the Building?" Because
It's
the
about
characters. I didn't know anybody from the building would be here tonight, so I'm gonna.
We know.
I was like, "Mom, you gotta watch this show. It's so funny." And it reminds me of your building, and then the people in the show kind of remind me of some of the people I've run into.
I mean, you never named it.
I don't know anybody there. I bump into some new person every time, and then I was like, am I the problem? Is it me every time? I was like, Mom, you gotta watch this show. It's great. It's really funny. And then you started watching it, and then we were getting towards the end of the first season, and we came over for dinner the next time, and you're like, I figured it out. I know who did it.
Well, we challenged each other to predict the ending of the first season.
Yeah, I don't see. I just want to be along for the ride. You and my wife, you guys you figure it out, and then don't tell me. I just want to. But yeah, we went over and you're like, I figured it out, and like, well, go ahead and tell me, and then we'll know if you're right or not. The season, and you had this theory for how it all worked, and I was like, Mom, I don't think the show's that smart. I think, no offense, the show's great.
Yeah, they are that smart, but you can't end it with every good ending.
No, it was they ended up doing something else, And I was like, well, but before we knew that, I said, Mom, if they don't do that ending, let's write our own story that has that twist in it. And I won't spoil it because if you haven't read it yet, you just pick the book up. We won't spoil the ending, but that twist is in this book.
Well, after that conversation, then led to when Matt suggested we write a book. I said, "Well, gee, I already have to read this. It's not on the shelf." My nephew's here tonight, and we went through a same experience about 25 years ago with my mother, which was his grandmother when she was ill. And I took a leave of absence from teaching for a couple of years to take care of her. And the only thing I could do at night by myself while she slept was to write or read. And I turned to write nonfiction, but I didn't have all my source materials. They're all 3,000 St. Regis. And so I started writing mysteries for fun. And because I needed to lighten myself up a little bit. So I wrote 3 by the time I got back home and put them on the shelf and forgot them 20 years ago because it's not really what I write. And so I said, well, man, I think I have some ideas. We can pull those down and get started. And you wouldn't recognize this book as the original story because, well, man, pump it up. We took out characters, added characters. Things happened to the characters along the way that we didn't even think might happen, but that did.
Yeah. So that's how it started, right? And then, it was great because we've never worked together.
When you were in utero, we were working together. We both put a lot of work in.
I'm not sure how much I was contributing.
I will say this, that he was over 10 pounds. And so I was very well aware you were on your way. But so we've been working, but
yeah, it was interesting to figure out how we were going to work on this together because I usually write and draw my own things. But the last few years I had been co-writing a thing with Gianni, and he sort of taught me how do you co-write a book. And so from him I learned how we could co-write, and then we would just meet in the kitchen and then just sort of brainstorm.
We don't have one of those beautiful islands like most of you have in your kitchen. We kept it simple so I could knead bread and stuff like that in the big table. So we turned that big marble table into a partner table with Matt on one side and I was on the other. And
we just sort of talked through the characters and the dialogue and to me it felt like role playing game. Yeah. I know you've never played a role playing game, but
no, I taught school, middle school, and a lot of role playing.
Yeah. But that's what it felt like. So I would take my character, you'd take your character, and then you'd say something, and I'm like, oh well, and then we back and forth.
Well, yes, we each took the persona of one character. And sometimes we got to laughing so hard that we would have to stop and say, are you getting this down? Getting this down? And some of that had to be cut. And sometimes I would ask Matt, he would take the story a little bit further than I'm used to. I said, Matt, can you do that? And he said, well, I've done worse. And which was true. The first meeting, more like things that you and Keanu like.
Yeah, we did the book Berserker, which is one of the most violent
Oh,
comic books
business, yeah.
that exists, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But that was the point of that. That's not the point of this. This is PG-13. There's a real bad word in French that we snuck in there.
But no, it's not the worst French word though either. Is it? You did sneak that in. You did get a few things. So I don't think I had the last run through on it. You did the last editing on it.
Yeah. Let me. Do you want to talk about these chairs at all, or
Oh, well, if you want to drop by sometime, I can show you some beautiful French chairs. And the theory is that they were carved for the World's Fair and were in the French Pavilion, which was the model of the Grand Trianon or the Palace at Versailles. And everything points that direction. Even my correspondence with a French authority on antique French chairs points that way. And I saw them at Selkirk's auction house, so I had no business being there. But sometimes you have to, get away from the desk. And so I have a weakness for chairs. And I saw these chairs, and I thought it's the most beautiful chairs I've ever seen, except at Napoleon's apartment, and which the furniture came from, I think, from Versailles, some of that makes sense. These actually were carved by a carver in about 1900 for the fair. Is my theory at this point. And the chairs at Versailles, Marie Antoinette's chairs, were used as a model. So if you had seen these chairs, you would have been getting against the most beautiful chairs I've ever seen.
Yes.
And our French authorities said that we way overpaid for them, but we disagree. One thing doesn't. No. We didn't overpay. But so.
Yeah.
Or,
no? I don't think so. But I think
you can
that's.
come see, I'll take your picture of them.
The idea of the story more. I was looking at our book files, and the original title of the book was The French Frame. Do you remember that?
Oh,
We
French
called it-
frame.
And then we came up with a better title. But that was the working title. It had to do with the French chair frames, and then the picture frames, and then
Yeah.
main frame.
The name Gilt Frame is really the Gilt chair frame, but other frames do come into the picture.
Yeah, so that was an inspiration. There's a ton of you in this, or things that you were. It happened. Well, your original short stories, and then the
Yeah.
chairs are happening.
Oh, the chairs, yeah, that really was, oddly enough, it was a mantelpiece at Wash U that was in the book originally. They're beautiful wooden carved mantle, and the administration building of Wash U was used for offices during the 1904 fair. Wash U hadn't really opened yet, and so the World's Fair rented those buildings, and so I worked in that carved wooden mantelpiece into the story. But when we got the chairs, and you wanted to go to Paris, you said,
Well,
because it was
yeah.
translated into French, we get to go to Paris, and it works for me.
My rule is always set the book where you want to go. So a lot of my books, Hawaii is in here as well. But I think that's a good rule of thumb. You just never know. I remember I was pitching these TV show ideas, and I was like, well, I think I learned this from this producer. He's like, just pitch everything set in Hawaii, so you can go shoot it there. I was like, that's a smart idea. But yeah, but also me drawing the whole thing, I don't want to draw just St. Louis. Like it is set in St. Louis, which I'm glad.
And the arch,
from
if you
here.
look carefully, the arch is in there. It'll be in
Yeah.
there, I think, more prominent next
The
time.
arch is in here,
Make
your-
it bigger next
Your
time.
building's in here.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what was cool is I actually took I don't know where you found the floor plan. You did the floor plan for the building.
When we moved in, the Murphys, Patrick Murphy and Ann Murphy, we bought our apartment from them, and they left behind all these wonderful historic documents. And I'm sure that everybody has copies of them too. If not, I'm certainly happy to donate or share. Yeah, but that's what we used.
Yeah, so that helped with the drawing of the book. because it starts in St. Louis and then they go to France and but that's what it helped with this. Oh, I just had, let me go back real quick. This is, the script of the book. I don't know, how many, has everybody read a graphic novel before? Is any?
No,
Generation does not like graphic novels traditionally. I think Mouse was the first graphic novel, and I think it won a Nobel Prize for literature.
Yeah.
I think the first graphic novel our generation really noticed, and we've not really taken to them. So my goal or my job on the team was to make it appealing to our generation. So I kept having to ask myself, would I show this to my friends? And so we're hoping that it has broader appeal than most graphic novels.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to do a book that you would pick up, you know, and read. Just because I grew up with comics. I lived
Well,
for
we did too, didn't
comics.
we? And most of us, I think, bought comics when we were young.
Yeah.
Little Blue, Ducks, Rouge.
Yeah, but
Richie Rich.
I really don't, until the 70s or 80s, there weren't comics you could just grow up and then read those also, you know. It was kind of a cutoff. We kind of grow up and you stop reading them. Anyway, so I thought that was an important part of this book, is it's something that you would read, like fun mystery. But I'll just show a little bit of the process here, where this is all the characters we came up, and we had but we come up with the characters and the backstories for everybody, and then an outline for everything. And then you go to art. What's next? But then I do panel descriptions, and then I was drawing everything, and then everything in the book is watercolors after that. So everything is pen and ink, and then watercolors at the end, and then but you helped with watercolors, right? Did you know how to do it? Or did I show you?
Both.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit, but he only trusted me to do the flesh tones, so I got to do all the little tiny fingers and toes and arms and hands. And then you could go in and shadows and things on. I did just like the basic
Yeah, you do.
underneath.
Well, that's the time consuming part, is all the
Yeah,
fingers
right,
and the.
Right.
And-
Oh, yes, it was.
I do appreciate it. But then the opening scene, I think we had this opening scene pretty early, because I'd come over and when we were writing the book, and I was like, wow, I was helping Charlene, my wife Charlene, was helping her make dinner, and she's like, cut the chicken breast into strips, you know, and I was cutting. I don't cook a lot. Obviously I don't cook much. But I was cutting it, and then I was just getting sick, because it just looked like fingers. And I was like, I just didn't want to eat it. And I was like, oh, I got the perfect opening to the book. And mild spoiler, but it's the first scene of the book, is that we start with this chopping that looks like something horrible is happening. And then we cut to you making creme brulee, and it looks like you're maybe torturing somebody, and I'm
We
chopping
wanted to
somebody
make
up.
it look like something
And then you pull back, and it's like,
just in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just dinner at the Kint's.
And then another fun thing, did you bring your shoes?
The shoes are back
Yeah,
there. If you've
okay.
ever been to the market, antiques, I love that place. And I always find something there. And I found these wonderful leather shoes from someone who didn't need them anymore, who had been to Annecy, which I think is on the French Riviera. And they're just the most unique shoes. And so you thought, you came over for dinner one night, and I was talking around him and making sure that he noticed my shoes. Something like it before. So then I think you decided, let's use them as markers as we travel around.
Yeah, your shoes had the name of the city on
Annecy.
on them with a little scene. I was like, well, that's perfect. In comic books, I don't like using captions where it's like, it just sets the scene. I just feel like that's a cheap way to, I don't know, there's something about it that's just boring to me. So when you had those shoes on it, I was like, oh, that's how we'll do it. Your shoes will change. Every scene will set the scene of what city we're in. You know, so you'll see it goes from there, and then Montenegro, your feet are up. And I just thought that was that was a fun part of it. That's an idea that doesn't happen without a collaboration where I'm coming over and we're kicking
Well,
ideas.
or without a trip to the market and cheap mall.
Yeah.
It's just kind of thing that you think you couldn't plan this.
Yeah. No, it's funny and let's see what else do I have.
It also gave me a chance to have some really good accessories. I couldn't have my character going places without a handbag.
No.
You wouldn't go without a handbag. You wouldn't go without a few bangles or something.
So I remember you were very particular about what your character. So when I say your character, it's not you,
No, it's the one I portrayed.
right?
It's certainly not me.
Your character, what she wears and the accessories and I think I have to go back a few times
And
and add some details.
from pre-COVID weight.
Oh,
And then
Can I add something before you go on?
yeah.
What's interesting about this is the book is how many 800 pages long? I'm not sure, but every
200
page,
pages.
every stroke has been captured on the screen. You drew it on the iPad, and so every time you made a stroke, the iPad captured that, collected it, stored it. So we could watch the whole book being drawn from beginning to end, stroke by stroke by stroke. That's great.
It starts with thumbnails, which is that real light part in the background, which is just trying to figure out what's going to be in the panels, and then how many pages the whole book is. So I'll do the whole book first, and then you go in and then start adding details and tightening it up. You'll see it goes the whole way through. But the process I used to do, everything was brushed ink on paper, and then I started drawing on iPad just to see, And what's funny is that I end up spending as much time trying to replicate what I can do by hand on the iPad, and you can do it, but I don't know that you gain anything except it does record it. So,
Yeah.
but then I take that and I print that out on watercolor paper, and then everything we paint is on. You end up with real art at the end, which is important to me. Still.
This is all real.
But yeah, but then you can see it, and then I'm just going in with it's the real ink, not real ink, but whatever the final line art and drop. This is sped up too. I wish I could draw this fast. 10 or 20 times speed at least. It's a lot.
Where did you learn your part?
Where did I learn?
Yeah, how
art?
did you learn?
Yeah, what's funny is when I was in high school, I was a sophomore in high school, and I loved English class. I loved writing and reading, and I wondered why. 'Cause,
Yeah, I know. And you don't know we started working.
Look, I heard something start. But I remember I was illustrating it was a book report for Huckleberry Finn, which we had to read for class, and we had to write an essay on it. And I drew a cover for it. And then I remember after class, the English teacher, Mr. McCrary, took me out. He's like, "Hey, stay after class." I thought I was in trouble. He took me out in the hall, and then, but it was to meet the art teacher, Mrs. Weinmiller. And then he showed her the thing that he's like, he needs to be in art class too. I was like, oh, I don't know. It never occurred to me. I like drawing, but it never occurred to me to take classes.
Well, and a parent wouldn't encourage a child to be a starving artist either. If they're gonna go that way, you let them get there by themselves. But I want to, if you're finished, or finished, and then I want to back you up a little bit, because I remember an earlier time with drawing.
No, that's it.
No.
I was going to ask, so you continued with art classes in high school then? And
Yeah, I took art classes, and then when I went to Webster University, shout out to Webster, but and then I just went to art school there. I learned there was painting, drawing, graphic design, and then by the time I got into high school, I knew I wanted to do comics my whole life. So I was like, well, what do you need to do that? Well, you need to design, you need to paint, you need to draw, you need to write. So I took all those classes, and just with the idea of applying it all to comics when I got out of school. And then you just really there's no trick to learning art. It's just repetition. It's like anything. If you do it enough, you're gonna get good at it. It's funny, it's like, we did an art show for my daughter who's in college, I'll sidetrack here. But my daughter is graduating in Minneapolis this May. And we did an art show for her that we saved every single piece of art she'd done from the time she was born till she was 21. And we put it all, we had an art show, we put it all in order. And it just covered like this gallery space, every inch of the gallery space walls. And putting it in order, you realize like there's nothing, there's a lot of fun and funny things, but there's nothing exceptional until high school. And then you can see, oh, this is where most kids stop. And then where she kept going. And I was like, I recognized it because that happened to me too, where I was like, there's nothing, it wasn't like she was a prodigy when she was 6, you know, she's, I know you are. I know you are. But
This is where you and piano don't. It's the advantage of working with me and not piano. I was there.
no, I still defer to you, just like I defer to him. But yeah, but you can see where she's like, she just decided she was gonna really, really get going and really learn, you know, and it was just repetition, keep doing it.
But do you remember when we gave her her first pair of scissors and she cut,
No.
I mean, the stuff looked like Matisse. And I mean, of course, it wasn't, but we had a lot of art books, something like 4,000 books of art. And we would read art books for children, that kind of thing. And we gave her a pair of scissors and you could see a talent when I do believe if you look carefully and if you look carefully, you can see that there was something there and interest for one thing, because she was always doing it.
Yeah, no, I'll also say like even a credit to you and the atmosphere you grew up in, that's part of it too, having art supplies, having books around,
Lots of options.
right? It's all there. So that's not just an influence, it's like it's accessible, and then you're encouraged, or not even encouraged, but you're just let loose to do it. Like
Yeah, and given the time.
yeah, and I know my room, my daughter's room was worse than my room because we just let her go. You know,
But we let you go too.
yeah, she was messier than I ever.
She had more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after graduation, Matt, you worked at Macy's in the art department for a while, and then you worked at Sporting News in the art
Yeah, no,
department. Things.
After I got out of school, like comics is like kind of hard to make a living at. There's probably a handful of us that actually do it full time now, you know, that I could list. And so right out of school, I'm not doing that full time, but the graphic design was my plan that like, oh, now I can move out of the house. No, but I'm sure you wanted me out as much as I wanted.
I heard you were there.
No, but yeah, it was good to have those jobs for 2 reasons. One is like I learned design, which this book, everything in all of my books, I've touched every part of it, right? Like we wrote it, but everything else I did, like the design of it, every choice, the paper, everything.
Except for the flesh tones.
Yeah, except for the fun. See, I'm not a control freak. I can let things go.
And this is what you do with children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. It's so important, I think, to look at what you're doing. When Matt was 4, he won his first art contest, and I think, you know, when a child is 4, they win an art contest, it makes you think, oh, they at least like what they're doing. It was a Star Wars contest. Star Wars, the film was it 1970?
76.
76. Star Wars had just come out, and the Belleville newspaper had an art contest. We were visiting my grandmother, and he needed something to entertain himself with when he was 4 years old, because otherwise it was just us visiting. And so he was looking at the comics, the funnies in the newspaper, and he saw the contest. And so he drew a picture and won it for his age group, and it was published in the Belleville paper. We didn't get the Belleville paper, though we lived on this side of the river, and my grandmother didn't save it for us, so we had never seen it in the paper. In the mail, he got, I think, 4 tickets for the Star Wars movie at whatever the Belleville movie theater is. I doesn't matter. But then in any case, we got the tickets, so we knew that he had won. We never saw the the picture printed in the newspaper though, until about a few months ago, we were, doing the book signing at the, Apotheosis
Yeah.
Comics on Washington.
Rain.
On Grand.
Yeah, yeah.
And while we were setting that up, I was having a conversation with the man who owned the store, and we just started talking, and I mentioned the art contest, and then we'd never seen it, and I was in the process of trying to dig around in the archive and get it, but I didn't have a lot of time to do it. So while we were talking on the phone, the owner of the Apotheosis, we were talking on the phone, he had contacted somebody that he had worked with, and he had it before I hung up. He had well, what is it, the digital version of that paper. He had it before we hung up. And then when we went to the signing, he had it framed and gifted it to me. I think we should start carrying that around.
It was-
I love it.
That drawing, well, so it's four. The drawing is this big. It's like the crudest looking TIE fighter. You know? Like the competition was other 4-year-olds.
And there may not have been other 4-year-olds. I don't know your first year level, but you may have been the only entry.
It's great.
But it doesn't matter because the picture is good. It's really good for a 4-year-old. I mean, I knew exactly what it was and what's read the page. So in any case, so it started. But when you were 4, we started giving you pencils and paper.
Yeah, no, we always said every art supply that we wanted was we got or we were able to. You know, I remember getting a drafting table when I was in high school. That was a big deal.
You got in some trouble in high school too because you were very good at drawing caricatures of the football players.
Yeah, there was a mini comic that passed around. It was just like a one-on-one. I would do these little stapled ones it was like, not just the football, it was teachers, everybody, you know. It would get passed around. And then I'd be like, don't get caught with that. It's very exposed. Yeah, I don't know where those went. But I'm sure they were good natured.
They're probably on eBay. They're probably on eBay.
So that was our process. What did we not cover?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, those are the questions were usually asked.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe, I don't know what time we need to give
Yeah.
you an
Oh.
opportunity to ask.
One
But Bill,
thing I'll
it's good
say-
that you just said
Yeah.
your question, so please do.
One thing I'll say about this too is I know growing up, I remember there being Agatha Christie paperbacks all over the family. You blew through those, I think, in the summer. You know, I remember seeing the covers and then being, I was too young to read them, you know, but the
Yeah,
covers
a
were.
bag of White Castles and an Agatha Christie.
What could be better?
Yeah, oh, there you go. The kids are in bed.
But the covers were great. There would be like a big knife and like on the cover, and they looked so dark and interesting. And as I got older, I started we read Sherlock Holmes together, and so I think we grew up reading and talking about mysteries. And we'll get to the thing you just remembered. but what was I gonna say? Now I forgot what I was gonna say.
That is not me
Oh,
forgetting.
no, well, I think for me, the mission of this is, I think, while we were fans of all those, we've read all of that. The thing that always disappoints me about every whodunit sort of murder mystery is that once you've read it, it's usually you don't want to, there's no point in going back and reading it again. You know, it's like, oh, you figured it out partway through, or you're like, oh, the readability is not there, at least for me, especially I love Agatha Christie, but once you've read it, until you've forgotten what the twist is, then there's no point in going back. So I want to make sure that the book we did would be something where the whodunit is part of it. It's like there's that twist, but there's more to it. It's character driven, and there's characters that have interesting sort of backstories in a way that you want to go back and read it again. It's like, oh, now I know the twist, but now I want to go read it again just to fully understand it. And I think, I don't know if I think we succeeded. I read it again. But
What is this we're watching?
Flesh Thomas.
yeah, this is a look. See, I did some of them. This is me. I did some.
Oh, that's my brush. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious.
Well, maybe not.
So do
Yeah.
you layer the colors over time?
Yeah, so it's a 200-page book. So what I figured out over the course of painting 1,000 pages of comics is that for me, I don't change colors. Like half the time taken is like washing a brush, changing a color. So I'll go through a whole section, like 10 or 20 pages, and I'll just do everything that's the same color. I'll just go through in a wave and do it. And then this is totally taking all the romanticism out of being an artist painting, but I hit it with layers of color, and I just go back over and over again, maybe 10 or 20 times, and then I'll hit it one more time, and I'll look at the whole thing and make sure it works and go over it one more time. But yeah, so I don't know if we'll see a full page being done here. We'll just see like part of it.
Well, Matt learned to do shadows on faces by going to comic book conventions. Well, we lived for a while in Kansas City, Missouri, and when Matt was young, every Mother's Day there was a comic book convention, and there was only one in the area a year, and it was on Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to
On
you.
Mother's Day. And so you learned how to shadow on Mother's Day, one of those years, and the mothers all got a carnation as they had re-entered into the convention hall.
And it was the first little convention I ever went to. It was in the basement of this strip mall, and you go down there and it's just a bunch of dealers with long boxes of comics. And then, but this is like 1980 something. So Jim Lee was actually there before you knew who he was. And then there's a few other artists, but there was one guy, Steve Lytle, he was a colorist back in the day, and he had these pre-printed pages. He had Conan, and then he had something else, and then for $10 he would paint it for you while you waited. And so I remember I got a Conan, and I was like, take Conan, $10, and then I just sat and watched, or I stood and watched him paint it, and he did it in layers like this, and then I had like this blue layer over the end. Blue for is for these playing in shadows afterwards. You see the shadows they're not black, but there's a blue in it. So, I picked that up early.
Yeah, on
Very
Mother's
Yeah, on Mother's Day.
Mother's
Yeah. Gosh, she was always on Mother's Day
Always
too.
Mother's Day, yeah, but they were memorable.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
They-
No,
yeah,
because I'll say that there's a show I go to in North Carolina every year, Heroes in Charlotte, and it's always on Father's Day. So I'm getting my payback.
It's a kind of like one thing that I think is as good about a graphic novel, or my experience has been, is to just go through and just look at the pictures. I would ask for certain accessories in the book, and that was able to shrink it, but when it's shrunk down, you'll never notice that you have a bag or something like that. And that's true, but if you look carefully, I don't think you can see everything now that it's shrunk down, but if you look carefully, it's just amazing. It really made me appreciate a graphic artist by doing even the simple coloring in it, because I started noticing the detail on 5 little fingers, and I compare graphic artists to wonderful masters like Rembrandt. You think of Rembrandt, who was a master at portraiture, and then you look at the graphic artists, they don't just do one visage frozen in time, they take that face and they change it hundreds of times with different expressions. And when you don't, I had to keep cutting out words because I write nonfiction, I develop a piece. I had to keep cutting, and that kept saying, I don't think you know how few words you're going to get, Mom. And so I kept cutting and cutting and cutting, and it really hurt. And then I saw the art, and then I realized, it's the expression on the person's face that captured what we've lost in the words. So I would suggest, if you like things like this, that you just go through and look at pictures and notice things that you wouldn't ordinarily notice if you go racing through or even reading the story. Really, I appreciate that. And then this was another thing where I also compared you to Camille Pissarro, because he was a French impressionist, and he would move his easel around outside from one landscape to another, trying to find the perfect one. And then he would go inside his Paris apartment and he would move it from window to window, trying to find just the perfect picture. But I think a graphic novelist has has everything in the imagination, and whatever the landscape turns out to be, it didn't exist until he imagined it, or a graphic novelist imagines it. And so I think that, well, probably never be called masters, but I still think they do have a gift, and I do think they have something that should be appreciated.
Listen to you talk about my art all day.
And I could talk about it. See, this is advantage of being over camera.
Well, oh, this is the thing I remember we didn't talk about was growing up the little mysteries you would set up for us at home.
Just
Tell
one.
about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it?
Go ahead, it was your dad's shoes.
I don't, but it's funny is I didn't remember until you brought out, I don't know how you still have those soles of those shoes.
I-
When we were younger,
I'm still unpacking. Even if the thing moves, I'm still.
when we were younger,
That's
you
what
would,
you
you would set up little crime scenes in the house for us to solve, you know, but they wouldn't be, it wasn't a murder, it was like
No,
the
but like,
cookies were stolen, who took the
Who took the
cookies?
cookies?
Yeah, and then, you had the soles of dad's shoes, you know, it's like, we'll figure out, and I won't spoil it because we have mysteries set up in the back, so when we're done,
Oh,
go
yeah.
look at the mysteries, and if you solve them all, we have a little prize for you. And it's honor system, you just tell us.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would set up these, there was like the worn sole of a shoe, you know, and why is it worn like that? And you have to kind of figure it out.
Well, when you're raising children, I think it's important, no matter what profession that they're going to go into, I think it's important to make sure that they're very good observers of what's going on around them, and also to be good deducers. And loving Sherlock Holmes, like, that was a natural then to just incorporate that into every day, because there's so many things that, well, like the shoes for them, and if you take the time to notice it, they're really interesting mysteries, like what caused that?
No, the byproduct of that is we got caught doing everything.
Oh. And Eric, you did, I had to acknowledge my nephew, he's from Illinois. Yeah, you guys got busted all the time.
I can vouch for your, I remember, and I don't remember exactly the theme, but it was, I think it was raining, we were staying, when you were living in St. Louis, and it was a rainy day, and so you had
We
said
lived
like a
on
treasure,
paper.
yeah, it was like a treasure hunt or something, we had to go from place
Oh,
to
that's
place,
right.
and finally had to, you know, and again, it was just one of those things you just came up with, because it was raining, we couldn't go outside or do anything with it, so, yeah, so I can.
Or you probably have a book in you too, Eric.
What's that?
You probably have a book in you too.
No, well, you never know, maybe.
That just reminded me of the time we tried to heist my brother's comics. Do you remember this?
My younger brothers were more in on it than I was, but I remember that, yeah, I remember.
I don't know if you
something
were
about
involved in it.
that. I think I might have been, I think I stayed out of that one, but I remember your brother found out pretty, you know, right at the very last.
Yeah, he did. He
Well,
older than
he was
me,
raised
so
to be
I know,
observant.
he was raised. I was at the low end of the
You were the
getting
baby.
away
You
with
were
it,
the
with
little-
it, swimming pool. No, that's funny.
So, yeah, so we have a couple of mysteries over there. Actually, one is, well, I mean, they can see them for
Yeah,
themselves.
you
when
can
talk
see-
about it, but-
But it does, that also reminded me of these books I had when I was a kid, and I've mentioned this probably 10 times in interviews now, I should just go find out what they were called, but they were photos, it was books of photos, and it would be a scene. They weren't miniatures, there's a couple of miniature scenes in here that we did inspired by a few things, but these books, it was a murder, and then you know, the window's broken and the clock has time on it, and you have to look at all the visual clues to figure out who did it, you know, and have a little list of suspects. And then so just by looking at the pictures, you're supposed to figure it out, and you go to the back of the book and it has the answer. There's a whole book of those, and I remember loving those when I was a kid.
And it wasn't I Spy.
It wasn't, they were kind of like that. But it was like a real room that they had photographed. You know, I'll find out and post it on. Because we need to know how big. Well, what I liked about that was, and I think we did it in here, and I think every mystery has to do, is you have to play fair with the reader, right? You have to present all the answers so that you could figure it out, you know? And that's, to me, that's sort of the nerve-wracking part of doing any kind of mystery. This one, I think I was worried about it. I think you're always worried about it a little bit, like, is it too easy? Or did you play fair enough? Is it solvable? You know, and I think we sort of walked that line. Well,
I don't think you really know that until somebody tells you, tell a reader.
yeah, but I think when you go back, you could be like, oh yeah, okay, that's that. You know, I think it's all there. I think we played fair.
I do too.
But it's a fine line, you know, where you don't want. But it's also, the book isn't all about that either. So to me, the beauty of it is, even if you do figure it out, it's like, well, knowing it, going through it, it's still, I think, just as enjoyable. Even if you do figure it out. I don't think you will. But
Oh, I don't know.
maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know.
I just jinxed it.
If you were to err on one side of that line, do you err more towards giving the reader more or more towards holding back?
Yeah, I did a bunch of research because I'd done a murder mystery a few years ago called Department H, which was like it was underwater based. It was more action based, you know. But what I did when I was researching that book and then how to write, I've never done a murder mystery till and what I realized, and this is what Agatha Christie does too, is just flood you with all the information, right? And then everybody has a motive. Everybody could have done it, you know.
No one has an alibi.
Yeah, nobody has an alibi, so
Everyone had a motive.
possibly anybody, you know. And so a lot of it is just like put all the real information out there, but then you put so much more in there too, like the
Camouflage and a
yeah, and then visually, then it's really easy, I think, because I think it's a little tougher with prose where you're actually like saying, you know, calling things out, which seems like you're really exposing yourself. But with art, you can just, we have the crime scene. There's like a ton of stuff on the crime scene. I remember we were laughing so hard when we were coming up with what it would look like, you know. it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it is it's all there. You just to look carefully. Yeah.
So I'm a librarian and I work a lot in the youth and teens library, and a lot of the kids that come in there are really, really excited about graphic novels. It's like the first type of book that I think really tends to hook a lot of kids. And sometimes the parents will come up and be like, oh, damn graphic novels. And I like to tell parents, like, actually, did you know that graphic novels have like more like adult words, quote unquote, like the vocabulary level's a lot higher than most kids' books.
Yeah.
So it's like the vocabulary that you get to add into your books, is that something that you put a lot of like thought into, or is it something just like naturally comes part of the process to you?
I love big words.
Yeah. We got a star review from the American Library Association in their library journals. We're very pleased about that. So we hope that, I guess I look at it as not exactly a high-low book for a juvenile reader, but I would say in a way it is that way because there's high interest, and you don't have to know what every word means actually.
So context. Yeah.
That's right. And yet I think it does push you to without being frustrating. So it's not a high-low book, but I think it could act like one for the right age group in school. That was a concern for me because I did seriously keep asking myself, will I show this to my friends? Or what about young people? And even with the mystery scenes together, there's nothing, we didn't do any of the suicide or any of the really graphic things because you never know who will be there and how young people will be, and young people are, we're fine, young people are very influenced. And so we try to make the mysteries wholesome mysteries. And so I taught in the middle school for about 20 years, and I guess it's a book I think that could be in a middle school library. Cool. And, when I was young, I was reading about Donald Duck and his nephews. And I kept thinking, what's a nephew? What's a nephew? And nobody told me that maybe after months or years, I thought, oh, it's nephew. And so I think that this book is sort of like that. You don't have to know every word, but it will be challenging if you want it to be.
Yeah. Awesome. Great to hear.
I remember reading Marvel comics this is in the 80s, and there were a lot of big words, and like I learned so many words just from Marvel comics, And then I think when in the 80s, there really weren't young adult books, right? So it's like you're either reading this kid's book, or I have to go straight to like science fiction. I was reading a lot of science fiction and fantasy, so all that was not written for, 12, 10 or 12-year-olds, So you had to reach up. I feel like I enjoyed that. I felt like it felt like an accomplishment to be like reading it. This book that I was like, I don't know if I should totally be reading this for many reasons, So, but I was learning a lot of words. But and so I've never considered language. I've never dumbed anything down. We never dumbed anything down. I think especially with comics, the beauty of that is you have context of other words around it, but also the pictures.
Right.
So like if you're not getting it from the context of pictures and words,
And there is a percentage of young people too where they can have a certain number of words that they don't know without being frustrated. And I think it falls in that too, where you may not know the word, but it's not too frustrating. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yes.
And what library do you go?
I work at Central downtown.
Oh,
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's a great library.
Sure, I love it.
good.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful books and a beautiful place.
Right, let's start here.
Is there anything better than I just want to say when I walk in every time I walk in the door here, it smells so good. It's not better than this place. Now we're in here, you can't smell it, but walk out in the
Yeah.
door.
And then you get like the waffles from next door too. The waffles.
Are they open after?
They are, yes. So, I had a question from the online audience. Devin from Dallas says, I love the dioramas in the book. What was the process of making and designing those?
The dioramas.
Yeah, you want to talk about where those came from?
Meaning the same regions, right? Or
No, the miniature.
the miniature scenes?
Yeah, like
When his daughter who could cut like Matisse when she was little, she loved putting miniature scenes together, and I love estate sales because I'm always looking for books that are out of print. And there was a time when you couldn't order them, there was no Amazon. And so I started going to estate sales to find books that were out of print. And I also found all sorts of other very amusing things. And I like to give things a home that need a home, broken things like that. And then when Ella, his daughter, came along, I was babysitting, I would pick up little miniature things and make scenes for her. And she was in her high shirt and manipulate these, and she loved them. We didn't make murder scenes or anything like that. But she also didn't want the dollhouse thing. She wanted something more exciting, like a picnic with different animals. Yeah, all these little miniature things. So I moved all that stuff when we moved to the St. Regis, because she was at the age where she might still want that stuff. And miniatures don't take up a lot of room. You would think. That's what I mean. So we have all that stuff. I had all that stuff in case Ella still wanted it. And you were going to the
it was that Heroes Convention in
New York
Charlotte.
No, you were going to New York City.
No, it was Charlotte.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
The peep show, you're talking about the peep show? Yeah, it was Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Father's Day, Charlotte.
Okay. You wouldn't.
Yeah, I was going to that con and I wanted to promote the book. And I thought, what a fun way to, this is before the book was coming out. I was like, what if we build a little miniature murder scene and I'll cover it up, I'll have a little curtain over it, and then people can pay $1 and they're like to look in there and see the murder, And so I was like, Mom, do you still have all that miniature stuff from when Ella was a kid?
You know I do.
Yeah, I knew she did, of course. And then I was like, it would be cool. And then I don't think I built. I think you pulled it all together. I just transported it.
Yeah. Sometimes he'll get the concept and then somebody else have to pull it together. But so then we put the scene together. I didn't do murder scenes though with his daughter, but at the Miniature Museum in St. Louis, if you've not been there, it is just fascinating. Even if you're not into miniatures, it is fascinating. They have a wonderful gift shop there, and anything I can't find in estate sales, I find there. And they have the most vicious looking guy. I can't imagine who would have designed this doll or a dollhouse. The most vicious looking thug. He was a thug. He can dress like a thug. And like Al Capone or something.
Right.
And he's in.
What happened to him?
Yeah, well, he's that ended up being on the cover of
Oh, yeah.
Before the book came out as a hardcover, it was released as a comic book of 3 in a series. Because the publisher believed that, because publishing houses have such a tight budget, they believed that they would make more money if the book came out as a 3 comic book series first and released it at San Diego Comic-Con. And so the comic book.
That was the cover. It's in the book. It's the cover of chapter 2.
Yeah, you can't really see how ugly it was.
It's face down.
And so you were going to draw the cover for one of the 3 issues, and then you thought,
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'll draw the cover. I'll draw that scene, and then I was like, oh well, I'll put the miniature back together so I have reference for it, you know. And then when I was putting it back together, I was like, why am I drawing it? It's already together, you know. So then I just ended up lighting it and cut a window so the sun could come through, and then just taking a photo for that one. But yeah, it ended up in a book.
and one of the podcasters or some group that evaluates comic books voted it one of the best comic book covers of the year because it was so unique. And then some started a puzzle. Well, maybe Matt drew it, knowing what he does. Maybe it isn't this thing. Maybe Matt actually drew this. So there's still a debate out there. It's still, the jury's still out on, did he draw that? Or is it?
We'll never know.
We've got time for maybe one more question if anyone has anything they haven't asked.
Are you gonna do another one?
Yes, you're going to be in book 2 and 3. Everyone is going to open at St. Rita's. I'm not sure about ever using the name actually in the book. I know I've talked with you about this, so I have no legal problems, but it matters how people feel. And
You don't want stalkers.
well, so yes, there will be book 2 and 3, and I guess we'll base them on the other 3 that I wrote at Grandma's house that year. And they will all open at the same Regis. And
We'll look forward to it.
thank you. It's been well
No,
received.
we're planning the second, third book, and then what I think is interesting because I'm just bored with regular murders is that this first one is a whodunit. The second one is how did the murderer do it, and because then you'll know ahead of time, and the third one is how was the detective going to catch the murderer.
Yeah.
So each one has a different kind of murder mystery to it, just because I think
There's
that's
a French detective in the first book, and he will be in book 2 and 3.
somebody's called him pretentious, the detective. I
Wow.
was like, oh, is he? Maybe we are.
Fine. That's fine.
Give one more round of applause. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming.
So solve the mysteries, get a prize, and then if you want your book signed, we're signing books.
Yeah, grab a book, grab one for your whole apartment building.
Yeah.
I pre-ordered them.
Oh, perfect. We'll have them at the table too.
Okay.
I want to go solve a mystery. Yeah.
There's